Good day, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Governance and Policy Podcast by the Adam Smith Center, Singapore's first and only organization promoting pro-market values. The aim of this podcast is educational and to underpin the importance of economics, public policy ideas, and the humanities in general. I'm Colin, and I'll be the host for today's episode. Today, we're joined by Dr. John Yen, who will speak on the adoption of educational technology here in Singapore. John did research in neurotechnology before co-founding his homegrown EduTech company, Inknoe. Through his extensive R&D, he has created a range of interactive hardware and software products, including multi-touch smart whiteboards, interactive pens, touch podiums, and more. How are you today, John?
Good. Thank you. How about you, Colin?
Very fine myself.
Yeah.
All right, that's really good to hear. So perhaps we could start with how has the use of technology aided students or perhaps accentuated the disruption in education during COVID-19?
Sure. So I think definitely technology has helped a lot during the home-based learning period. So MOE has this student learning space. So SLS actually play a very big role in facilitating home-based learning. And we've seen a lot of online teaching solutions such as Microsoft Teams and Zoom, Google Meet. They're all facilitating live online classes. So it's a combination of synchronous and asynchronous learning, and technology is playing a very big part of it. Actually, learning technology has become, more popular than before in 2020, and because we need this now to move on to digital learning. So as well as the devices, right? So student needs digital learning devices to communicate with their teachers and to communicate with their peers. So we also have very good internet as well. So a combination of infrastructure, hardware, and software technologies has made a smooth home-based learning possible. I would say technology plays a big part in facilitating home-based learning.
Right. So maybe we could move on to some figures. So about 12,500 laptops were loaned out by the Ministry of Education for home-based learning during the circuit breaker period. Is this a staggering number to you, considering that Singaporeans are digital natives?
Interesting question. I think it's a good number. It's not very surprising. Yeah, the reason is the students, right? They don't use devices in their day-to-day school life. And that is why you see a lot of devices being loaned out. Actually, not just from MOE, they can loan from schools. Then a lot of if you went to Harvey Norman and Best Denki, all these places at the beginning of circuit breaker, they all sold out the devices, iPads and laptops. Then obviously you can buy refurbished devices. You could buy used devices from Carousel. So there's more devices than the actual number being added to the students for their home-based learning. So the main reason is although we use digital devices in our day-to-day life, but we are adults, right? We use the devices for working. Not to mention that during the home-based learning period, actually, we also need the device for working. So we cannot let our kids use our device. And kids didn't use device before in their schools. That's why this device become additional. So that's why, given the number, it's only about 2%. So I think it's still a very small number. Yeah. But it also reflects that our education is not digital yet. So that's why we need to buy laptops, we need to loan devices. If every student already got one device, and then of course we won't see this big number. Yeah, so that could be the direction we're going. Yeah.
Right. So as you've rightly pointed out, it certainly takes a village to raise and educate a child, particularly in this day and age. How can various education stakeholders, from parents, teachers to online learning portals, support the delivery of HBL going forward?
Yeah, so home-based learning is not an easy job for anyone. Actually, it's quite difficult. It's quite new to all of us. Just like all the disruptions that we face in workplaces, Yeah, so we need technology, and then we're not familiar with all these technology, and different stakeholders need to play their roles. So, for example, e-learning has been implemented for years actually, but the full-time home-based learning is quite different. So e-learning previously was just for a certain period of time, maybe just one day a week or one day a month. But now if you going full-time, and then the infrastructure becomes a problem, right? So we actually had some hiccups at the beginning. So we need to have big enough bandwidth to support concurrent users, and our online teaching tools need to be very secure. We also had some issues on Zoom before, but I think now it becomes centralized control. So it's quite secure now. And then, so all this infrastructure needs to be able to support the increase in home-based learning needs. And then our internet also needs to be fast enough. And for teachers, they are coping with a lot of difficulties with technologies. They need to prepare more lessons on SLS platform. They need to constantly in communication with the students to answer their questions and keep them engaged. So it's a tough job as well. And for parents, not to mention, we have our own work. So we're working from home, but we also need to pay more attention to our kids. We also become like the tech support for our kids, right? Whenever they have internet problem, we need to assist them. And then we sometimes help them with their homework as well. So it's definitely not easy for all of us. But this chaos that we are facing in education is just like the chaos in every industry. So I think that's all because the virus hit us so abruptly. So we have to adapt also very quickly. Yeah. So in general, I think we're doing pretty good job.
Right. So you've mentioned that HBL is heavily relying on parental supervision, internet access, and the availability of electronic devices. So I'm just wondering, do students from disadvantaged backgrounds who may not have the necessary support and risk falling behind academically, do these students, does home-based learning exacerbate the existing inequalities between these students? And then there's also the question about students of parents in the essential services. Will they be significantly behind their peers?
Oh, okay. So for those with more resources, obviously they will do slightly better in during the HBL period. But I don't think we need to worry too much about it because the home-based learning, we only did it for a month, so it's pretty short time. And now all kids are back to school. So they won't, for kids with less devices or less resources, or for kids whose parents are working essential services, so they have less guidance and supervision, they won't be significantly behind their peers because the time is pretty short. In fact, for this 1 month compared to their learning journey is pretty short time. So even if you completely don't learn during this 1 to 2 months, you should still be able to catch up. All right. So, and as I mentioned, learning is a very long journey. Okay, school learning is 10 plus years, and if you count our life as a lifelong learning journey, it's even longer. So we should not treat it as a competition. It's not a competition. So if you think that way, I think you won't be stressed by this 1 month of you're falling behind others. So you can catch up, and it's not to worry about. Yeah.
Right. So as we know, technology is already being introduced into the curriculum via ICT and the STEM framework. If technology becomes a curriculum cornerstone, will students from lower income families then be disadvantaged because of this because of the lack of resources?
Because they don't have devices.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so technology, we have software, we have hardware. So software could be cheaper in a sense, right? So the apps can be pretty cheap. A digital learning device is a investment for every family. But I strongly believe every student should have a learning device. Um, and without hardware, you almost cannot use the software because everything's digital now. So you need a digital hardware. I know that some teachers and parents, they see laptops or tablets, see these devices as distractions. And the main reason behind is the kids are using these devices for entertainment. So it's like a toy to them. But for adults like us, we don't feel that way because we use that for work. Yeah, so if you use that only for entertainment, it becomes a tool. That actually tells us more that we should use that for work because they are just like pens and papers. It's just a modern pen and paper for us in a different form. So schools should teach knowledge, um, but not only knowledge, they should also teach students how to use technology, how to interface with technology. So STEAM is actually for that, right? And so this way we can prepare the kids for the future, where when they grow up, the world will be completely different. The world is changing very fast. So they may be the co-worker with robots, or maybe they're working with AI assistants. Our homes will become smart. Our nation will become smart. So as computers, it's just like very basic tool everyone should use. So we should teach them in school. We should let them use in school from very, very young age. Yeah. So back to your question, I think for those who cannot, who don't have enough resource to equip their kids with laptops and tablets, these digital learning devices, our government should do the job. Actually, I read an article earlier that MOE will make sure all secondary school students can have their own digital learning devices, whether subsidized or loaned to them. I think it's very good. It's a very good move. And probably because of COVID situation, we can speed this up a little bit as well. Yeah, so everybody will have the ability to use these digital learning devices. Yeah.
Right, that's very reassuring to know. Will the education ministry, so I'm sorry, if you could do a report on a report card for HBL, accounting
Yeah.
for its successes and limitations as you already have, what grade would you give it and why?
I think in general it's pretty successful. So as I mentioned, the SLS plays a very big role and it's very successful. And that is because MOE and schools have been implementing e-learning for years. And so we're more or less prepared for this kind of situation, right? And then we have other tools and they have been very quickly put into place. So such as, Zoom and Microsoft Teams, Google Meet, and as well as the devices. Just now you mentioned MOE actually loans all these devices. So the fact that they can loan is because they already have enough devices in the schools, so they can loan. So we are prepared for this kind of situation. And teachers are working very, very hard during this home-based learning period. Um, there's a lot of behavior changes for them. And don't forget, they have their own kids at home as well. So for them, it's double the job. Yeah. But of course, during this period, we've seen some limitations we have to deal with. But we have to admit that home-based learning is not a substitute for school. So you cannot replace school. And that's why I think after 1 month, government decided, let's give it a break and let's shift the school vacation so that when kids are returned to school, they can resume the normal kind of learning, because the engagement, a lot of things that you could easily do in classroom is difficult when you do it online. So I think these are the intrinsic limitations with online learning. So although we try our best to make that as close to in-classroom learning, for example, in Inknoe, we developed solutions to enhance the teacher-student engagement during online learning. But I mean, bottom line is how no matter how interactive it is not comparable to a classroom teaching. So I think that's the limitation that we're all facing. Home-based learning is just a fallback when we couldn't go back to school. Yeah.
So, smart schooling allows students to learn through gamification and multimedia technologies anytime, anywhere. So, are we gearing
Yeah,
up for this revolution in education?
gamification.
Yeah, like in education.
Yeah, so good question. I'm a strong believer in gamification. So um, game actually 20 years ago, I used a gamification learning platform to learn English. So that's really, really useful. So gamification is definitely not a new concept, right? Actually, 10 years ago, when I first started our company, the first product was a Chinese language learning game that we developed for local primary schools kids, and then a lot of them became really motivated in learning Chinese language, and that is the power of gamification because when we play games sometimes we just want to hit the 3 stars before we move on to next stage, right? So that's the power of gamification. Just simple reward and excitement can increase your learning experience a lot. So nowadays there are all kinds of gamified learning platforms out there. So for parents and teachers, we can go and look out for them. I personally use these kind of tools, platforms to learn different things, and I use that to teach my kid as well. So that's a very important aspect of future education, and definitely we're already in the process for gamification.
Um, and now going a bit more to a current issue with regards to technology. Given the latest concerns about wearable technology and privacy invasion, do you foresee similar issues arising as we adopt more educational technology?
Okay, so this is something that just we need to pay attention. Yeah, because there are always two sides of the sword, and we at the so just now I mentioned that we use Zoom, and then there's the security issues, and then but MOE takes a step to provide some kind of control, and then it became fine. So all kinds of solutions at the beginning of their inception, there could be some issues, but it's still the general trend. We just need to pay attention, and as users, we feedback to the company that produce these kind of tools, and they will make changes to make sure they provide a suitable tool for the users. I think that's just part of the process. Yeah, but in general, that's the direction we're going.
So, over the course of HBL, some parents have reflected not only on the medium of home-based learning, but also have noticed how the current curriculum underserves their child's learning abilities. So with all
Mm.
these changes afoot in with the digital overhaul of education, will that also mean questioning the sacred cows of standardized teaching and testing? Will digitalizing education encompass more systemic changes in education?
I think so. I think we will bring quite a lot of changes because technology and even our society progresses very very fast in recent years, right? We read the news that we are going to Mars pretty soon. So I think the knowledge that we learn today may not be useful for future, and every day new knowledge is produced and existing knowledge is updated. So this rate is so much faster before. In fact, the working professionals in today's world feel that they have to constantly train themselves of new technologies, new tools, because the working tools are also being digitally transformed. So they have to constantly keep learning so that they can keep up with the need in their work. So for students as well, we cannot just follow the textbook created decades ago. That doesn't work, all right? We need to teach students new things for them to be able to, cope with the working situation or maybe their lives, in a few decades later when they grow up. So in schools, we definitely need to prepare the kids for future world. So that's why we are teaching them STEM or STEAM to equip them with a good learning behavior or skills to learn new things, skills to interface with technology. So these are the things that students really need to learn. So when our kids grow up, so as I said, they may be surrounded by robots, right? They may be colleagues with robots. So maybe by that time, some of them may already be living or working on Mars, right? So the world will be completely different. So it's our educators and our leaders' responsibility to constantly rethink education, and we need to keep learning as well. So for school leaders, for government, we need to constantly look for good educational solutions and technologies. We need to evaluate them. We need to first evaluate and then introduce good technologies to our teachers. So our teachers can keep themselves trained, updated to latest technology, and train themselves as well. There are a lot of courses out there to teach teachers how to use technology and how to incorporate technology in their teaching. So definitely this is something that they need to do as well, because in order to educate the future kids for future world, they have to learn the necessary skills to cope with all kinds of situations that we will see in future. So teachers need to be prepared for that as well. Parents as well, we have to dump the idea that the devices are distractions. So we need to let our kids use the devices for learning, for work, and then not just for gaming, right? So with development of technologies and solutions, they will be able to use that in day-to-day school life. I think that's definitely the future of education as well. The classroom will become a digital space. Our life has already become a digital space. So we have the physical world, and on top of that, we have the digital world where we communicate. So in school learning, if we implement this kind of technology, we definitely can make sure that the students can learn not just in class time, they can learn anytime, because learning can be synchronous, can also be asynchronous. Yeah. So in terms of curriculum, so because we introduce the technologies, curriculum should be changed as well. Yeah, so the technology will be able to update our knowledge really fast. So that is definitely what we can say about curriculum, the change of curriculum, and our parents and the teachers and leaders all should be aligned with the same frequency to prepare our kids for future.
Yes, I definitely agree that all these stakeholders should come together and revise the system as we move forward and keep changes in tandem with society. Yep.
Yes, definitely.
All right, so Dr. John Yan, it's been a pleasure discussing with you on the adoption of educational technology in Singapore. Thank you for being generous with your time and thoughts.
Sure, thank you, Colin, for hosting this session.
This has been the Governance and Public Policy Podcast by the Adam Smith Centre, Singapore.